You're listening to Subsound Radio. We bring you streaming and live broadcasting from the capital. This is the Alarpa Podcast. Welcome to the latest episode of the Alarpa Podcast. Joining me in studio is the irrepressible Mary. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic. So, we had an aborted attempt to go to a fairground today. The carnies were working, but not the machines.
Fail.
Epic fail. We were there last year. Penalty shootouts, darts, Ferris wheels, bumper cars, candy floss, apple bobbing. All that kind of stuff. So we're going to go there to make a video, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We're going back. Yeah.
Can you explain your vision for this?
Oh well, I'm not gonna mention all the details because then that will spoil it.
But mention some details because we have
okay.
half an hour to kill in this podcast.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're gonna be talking about translating and what the whole process is like and how. When you're translating is like you have to go into your little bubble, so it's a bit like a contained space to think about things and make decisions, and in a way it's similar to the fair.
Okay.
Exactly how we will tell you in the video.
Well, no, we were there today. Obviously, we couldn't go on any of the rides for the aforementioned reasons, but at least we could scope out the joint a little bit, find our Ferris wheel, do our third man or before sunrise homage, and this kind of artistic rendering of the thought process that goes through your mind when it comes to translations. Obviously, that's what we're going to talk about today in the podcast. This is like a companion piece to the video. Going to do next Monday or possibly Thursday, whenever the whole shebang is open, and because you have been a translator for many years now, haven't you?
Well, yes. More or less. An official translation. Yes, okay, yes.
Official, no?
Yes, official.
I know, yeah. Well, you don't have a certificate, do you?
Of being a translator?
Yeah.
No, that's why I'm saying an official.
Official, yeah. But you were in the United Nations doing translations for...
Yes, like so many other international things that are unofficial.
Okay.
So it's not doesn't make it less valid.
Okay, well, you've always translated my stuff reasonably well, as far as I can tell, based on my checkings with Google Translate.
Oh, yeah.
And then any mistakes, I don't know if they're your mistakes or Google Translate just retranslating it badly, so I have no idea where the fault lies. And you're back to work, we're both back to, well, I've been back to work longer than you, because
yes,
I'm the one who brings home the bacon in this partnership.
Yeah.
But you keep yourself pretty, and I appreciate that.
So
the first week of classes back for you has been going for you.
Yes, very busy,
Yeah.
extremely busy.
Because in most countries, things just don't stop, or they start up like in September. But this is Spain, so siesta season. October, just waking up just before Halloween.
Yeah, that's right. September is supposed to be back to school, but it was actually so slow, and then things only kicked off basically this Monday.
And of course, there's a big issue in Spain at the moment. Will Spain qualify for the World Cup?
Yeah, exactly. No.
Well, we'll soon find out, because the last two games of that qualification process are this weekend and during the and midweek. Ireland need to get 6 points from their two games against Moldova and Wales.
Well, easy.
Well, we'll see about that. Roy Keane, before we go on, he was provoked into giving a dismissive answer. Kevin Doyle, a young Irish forward, of 31 had to retire early. Actually, I just made that age up. I don't know. I have no idea how old he is. But he got injured in an Irish match, and because he keeps getting headaches, his doctors have advised him to retire over concussion fears. Roy Keane was kind of asked a line of stupid questioning, and he said, well, if you don't want to get injured, play chess. So people have taken that as he's so dismissive and contemptuous of Kevin Doyle's concussion risk, which is not the case. He was just responding as he usually does to very specific journalist questions that have an angle in mind. So, Roy, we're on your side. And of course, Barcelona, that's obviously a big Spanish issue as well. Will they win the Champions League this year?
That I say no as well, because I said no for Spain qualifying.
Okay, and obviously Madrid, there's a huge issue here as well. Gran Via is going to be closed next year.
Yes, after Christmas.
Yeah, which is insane. And this is literally the biggest thing in Madrid at the moment. Gran Via closing.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure it is.
So I don't know what's going to happen, basically. And are there any other issues banging around Spain at the moment?
Well, I haven't really watched the news.
Yeah, I haven't been watching the news either, no. I think in Alcalá de Henares there's a medieval festival.
No, oh well.
So there, I think that's it. That's all the things that are happening. Yeah, well, no. That's it. That's full stop. There's nothing else happening in the country at the moment. So I think we'll just go to part 1 or part 2 even, because what's the point talking about this? There's literally nothing that we can talk about.
Nothing to see.
Wins in spades. So Viva or Visca, we'll never tell. Madrid in turmoil. Real Madrid sitting 7th in La Liga standings. What is going to happen? Anyway, on to happier things. So you're going to give us a talk, a speech, a workshop, a run through into the world of the translation services.
I am.
Yeah, so we were discussing this earlier. So we, as we said in part 1, we're going to go to that fair, that fun fair. Obviously we can't. We did go there, but we couldn't really go on the rides. But for example, like I said to you earlier, if you were handed a piece of paper describing what one might do at a fair, so basically a basic run through of we did this, starting at a very basic point. How easy is it for you to translate things like that?
Well, that's, I would say, fairly easy, because there's no double meaning and there's no literary resources, it's just facts. So all you need is the vocabulary.
Okay.
And the structures are easy.
Okay.
And it's all a sequence.
Okay. Very
Easy
good.
peasy lemon squeezy.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yes.
Is there a Spanish phrase for that?
No.
There's not. So what would you say if I wrote easy peasy lemon squeezy? How would you put that into Castellano?
Okay. You would say está chupado.
Chupao.
Sí.
It's a suck.
It's licked.
It's licked.
That means it's very easy.
You Spanish. So dirty all the time.
NC.
And what?
NC.
NC?
Yeah.
What's that? Is that some kind of, oh, I thought it was some kind of sexual slur or secret word that only filthy Spanish people would know. But I wasn't, so I wronged you in that case.
You wronged me.
Yeah, it's an Irish way of speaking English. It was Irish, so it is fucking great English, okay. Actually.
No, it's terrible English, good Irish, which is what you want.
Well, that is exactly what I want. Yeah, I don't want to speak like an English person. So yeah, great. What are we talking about? Alright, translate this. Shut up. Alright then, get off my back. How you put that in Spanish? Get off my back.
Déjame en paz.
Oh yeah, I thought that wasn't. It's not like grope or something, no? Or.
Hey. No.
Oh, it's that. Okay, very good. Actually, speaking of translation and groping,
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Trump.
Verbally. No, not Trump, no. The metro. There's Madrid Metro.
Okay, what about it? Oh, yeah, yes, you mentioned last week about how they translate it. No?
Exactly. Well, what's the phrase? Do you remember?
No?
No dejes entrar al mano or something like that, no? Or
Ah, que no te metan mano,
yeah,
puede ser?
that's it exactly.
It
Yes.
could be, yes.
Which in English, well, basically that should mean don't get pickpocketed, but in Spanish that means don't get pickpocketed and don't get groped, and that's what they were going for. But unfortunately, they have that Spanish phrase and then the English translation, which is do not get groped, which makes no sense because the illustration is of a hand going into a bag. So it's been
I hadn't seen that until you mentioned.
Well, there's been complaints about that because of the shitty translation, which is pretty common in Madrid, to be fair. And also, as well, some people have been upset that, like, do not get groped as if you're, like, permitting it. And obviously...
Right.
Yeah,
okay,
so there's that kind of angle to it as well. And you can see, from that perspective, yeah, obviously people can be a bit annoyed by that. But the translations aren't generally good, even in official situations. I mean, you hear, like, funny stories. Well, you did when the Olympics were in Beijing about how things were translated from Chinese into English and were farcical. But you have kind of time pressure. He's organising a huge event. Chinese and English is a bit more distant than Spanish and English. So why do these things happen?
It's just right now I was thinking of an example from like the city center where it said in a shop, it said...
Don't get licked?
No, it said like premio seguro, as in guaranteed prize.
Yeah.
As in, you would play, you would get a prize for playing. But then when they translate it, because seguro is like certain, but it's also insurance.
Yeah.
They said like, insurance price, that they will give you insurance.
Yeah.
If you bought like, I don't know, some memorabilia, which like was like, quite random.
Oh yeah. Or when...
I would do it, I would buy,
Yeah. Also, as well, I know somebody who went into a shop asking for a big box of tea bags and asked for a tetona
Why?
because they were mistaken, obviously.
Obviously.
I just made it up, by the way.
Yeah, you certainly have, because it made no sense at all.
Yeah, but these things can happen. Okay, well, we're not going to break here. We're actually parked without paying any money, and now the person's coming. So we're going to keep talking, look natural, while you add the ticket to the car.
Yes, and now is when...
If you're a fan of when the Deliveroo man delivered my food to my house during the podcast, this is the sequel to that, where we are interrupted by real life.
Real life situation, but it's so real that, oh no! Alright, can you just open the door and like speak to her?
And say what?
Just say that I'm putting it down because I think...
Oh, that? I don't think she's looking at your...
No? Okay.
Speaking of translations...
We're working against the clock. Luckily, a guy is distracting her. Or him.
A big smile in his face. What's he so happy about?
We're on! That's it.
Okay. We're good. No. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Car just pulled off, see if we're leaving here.
Oh my god. Thank you to that passerby for distracting the woman.
Yeah. So
we're still on it.
we're still on it. This is all staying in because
We're so natural.
yeah, I guess. Oh, by the way, this app is dying. Did you hear that story? This app, they've run out of money, so we have like until the end of the month. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that. By the way, so we have to download all the files and find another podcast hosting service.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's the end of an era.
Yeah, it is. But the podcast will live on. We'll keep doing it just with another server. So.
We will.
Yeah, that's fine. If they say if you want to buy the service, it's possible.
If you want to buy it of them.
Yeah. I don't know how much that would be.
Well, we'll think about it. Well, actually, when we enter and win that competition that we're going to enter next week...
Are the prices insured? Guaranteed?
The prices are insured, all right. And we'll be able to pay for that and much more.
And much more. Wow. I want to buy a subscription to Word Reference.
Oh, yeah?
Because I'm not really confident in your translations.
Oh.
But it's a premium service, I'm sure.
Oh.
And you can meet other people who like the same words you do. based on preferences. It's like a new dating app based on vocabulary.
Social media, lovely.
Yeah,
Okay.
for example. So anyway, yeah, so we digressed there on a tangente. What's a tangent in Spanish?
Tangente.
Oh, fuck, I knew that. So there. Yeah, can you stop getting distracted by fucking traffic warnings? So yeah, so you've translated things before, such as university documents, thesis, and these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And you've translated poetry, even plays. So if you had your preference, what would you choose to translate?
Sorry. But well, I quite enjoy translating poetry when when you get a grasp of what the author wants to say.
Yeah. So you've gone back to the poet on several occasions to ask questions about words and specific translations. I know that because that poet was me. I feel that poet was quite helpful in giving with his time,
That
his
poet was
understandings,
extremely helpful.
and his patience.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so as a translator, how helpful is that process? How annoying is that process? Would you just like to just get on with it, or is it just a given that you do always have to go back to the source and look for clarification?
No, I don't think it's a given. Sometimes, no, I don't think it's a given. But to be honest, sometimes I like asking for clarification, even if it's not essential, even if I'm 90% sure.
Because you get a buzz off like just knowing you're right, don't you?
No, because I want to be 100% sure that the author is happy with what is being said and that that's actually what they truly mean.
Okay, and on in general, do you get like clear answers, or do you find sometimes when people write things they actually don't know how to express them or explain them?
Well, I would say it's often the case that sometimes people actually go back to the original and they say, actually, this wasn't very clear in the original. So sometimes they actually change it in the original because when you make them think about it, I'm talking more about thesis or things like that, then they actually realize that it wasn't completely clear.
And why is that? Because, well, if it's a big thesis, I guess I can understand it because there's so many things you have to consider. But if it's something, I mean, does that happen with works of art like poetry or plays or creative pieces? Do you find that happens? Because I would imagine it doesn't happen as much because every word is where it should be.
Yes, it definitely doesn't happen as much, but that's precisely the reason why you need to ask more, because not everything is laid out. Like, you actually have to double check that there aren't double meanings, or there aren't any farther nuances that you're missing.
Because it could be local references, even if it's the same. Even that someone from that country, from another town or city, might fully understand,
Yes.
so those kind of things. But, you're in a situation where there's a bit of a contradiction because you have to be faithful to the source material and represent it accurately, which is the charge of any translator. But also, that the person giving you the document is not proficient or maybe even competent in the language you're translating it into. So, how do you, there must be a party that feels like, well, there's no accountability here, is there? I mean, obviously, as a person, you want to do it properly, but they'll never really know if you've done a good job or not, right?
Well, to be honest, that gets me more nervous, because then it's double the responsibility.
Because they're not checking and reinforcing what you've translated.
Exactly.
And not going through another layer
yes.
of
I
looking
know
at
that.
it.
I know that they're trusting me for it, so that puts more pressure on me, for myself to be satisfied enough with what I'm doing.
Yeah. And obviously, translation is a difficult job. It seems to me that sometimes writers translate old texts just for the crack. You know what I mean?
How do you mean?
Like Shemasini translated, I think, the Aeneid last year or 2 years ago. Sometimes you have famous writers who have a huge body of work and just out of nowhere they just kind of translate a Greek or Roman thing, and I don't know. It's never really received. I think in terms of like, well, this new translation does this, or because translation is a translation, and it's just what language is, and that is changing naturally all the time. So it never really seems to add to the art of translation, because translation just reflects language. So it just seems to be a case of just doing it for the crack, no, or doing it for the hell of it. I don't know, because that's my opinion as a writer, but you're a translator. So I mean, what do you think of these situations where?
Well, I think in the end, you have a few different translations of the same work. You end up picking a specific one, and well, I guess the test is that usually one translation becomes the most famous one.
Yeah.
So, well,
Well,
I
well,
wouldn't.
well, in case in Heaney though, like I mean, I remember studying that book before he translated it. So it's been translated before. So I just wonder what their motivation is, and that's a genuine question. It's not a cynical question. It's a genuine question. Like, what do they get out of translating it? Do you think?
Right. To be honest, from my point of view, I think translating, for example, those like author translations, that feature translations, to me they're a little bit like, well, self-centered, like I want this to be my translation or like my interpretation, right? There could be a genuine reason that you actually feel that the previous translations have, as you said before, didn't know the local language or culture or whatever. So then you feel like, for example, if the translation is very old, you feel the need to come up with a new version that is better translated. Other than that, I don't really think there's a need for like hundreds of translations, just having like minimal variations, unless it's something like, for example, like in the case of him that you're talking about. I think that's a case of purposely wanting to add a certain character to the translation.
Maybe. Well, I don't know really. What it depends on the person and what your motivations are. But I think personally, I wouldn't get any creative satisfaction from doing it because it's already been done.
Exactly. Yes. I would agree with that.
But if it's a new thing that hasn't really, well, it's been published maybe in English or in another language, but you can help bring it new life to something that's relatively recent, then there seems to be more of a buzz off it, and there can be more of a creative outlet in that situation. And well, you're a translator, so like I'm sure there's a patron saint of gamblers and policemen, and there must be a patron saint of translators, or there must be a translator's credo. What's it that
saying Google?
the Hippocratic oath: first do no harm. Sinn Féin Chucky our law. That's their credo. So what is there like a translation, like is there a translators union, if you know what I mean, in the sense of like there's a esprit de corps, there's a it's a group of people that's recognizable.
Well, I think translators tend to be freelancers mostly, and
I don't mean in the sense of like you meet each other, but I mean that it's like something that you can identify with. It's like a concept that you can attach yourself to, and it's something bigger than you are. If you're a writer, you're like, there's been Shakespeare, there's been Cervantes, there's been this and that, and if you're a footballer, there's famous footballers.
I think translators are very much like in the shadow. They don't. I don't think it's like a feature thing like being a writer, because at the end of the day, I think it's a sort of job that if you do it really badly, or if you do it badly, it's gonna be very obvious. But if you do it well, then people just take it for granted.
Okay, so they don't really look at that, no?
I don't think so. You only like, when have you ever looked at who's done a translation, unless it was because you saw something that you found like...
Well, it depends on what's being translated, because obviously if it's poetry, then very often you have bilingual editions where you have the English next to the Spanish, and in that sense, I think if you're a translator, it's a great thing, because people will know, well, it's very obvious that this has been translated, and that someone can check that translation against the original text, and you'll be reasonably confident that it's going to come out well from that. But also as a reader, if you're not familiar with the language, when I first started reading Neruda, I didn't speak Spanish, but seeing the language written down next to it really added another depth to it. Did a video before, another poet, hairy chest guy, you might remember, interviewed him. He even said the same thing about Neruda. He used to flick through the Spanish edition or the bilingual edition of Neruda and just see the Spanish word. So even if you don't understand the language, but of course he was living in Spain at the time, so he probably did understand some of it, it just adds, there's a rhythm to it, and there's a softness or a hardness to the words in different places that. So if it's, my point is like, sometimes you're in a shadow, but if it's a poetry book, it can be front and center in a way. It's not, unless it's a movie. Then even if it's the subtitles, and again, it's something that's very present there. But something that's large like a book or a theater piece or a play, then it's a case of just it's just this work. All of it's in the same language, and you don't really consider the translation aspect of it. But maybe they should start introducing. Certain classic works have a intro from an academic, so maybe they can have a more of an emphasis. Maybe they can have more intros from translators and talking about the challenges of it, which they do sometimes, I know, but maybe have it more widespread. But again, it's not a world I'm fully engaged in, so I don't know what your feelings are on those things.
Well, I don't know. As I said, like, I have a similar feeling. Like when you have like the bilingual edition, I can't help but checking the translation, and then sometimes I get frustrated because some things I wouldn't have translated like that, or I feel like they've missed something. But it's true that when you don't have it next to the other, you don't usually go and check the original.
Yeah.
So you just assume that they've translated it correctly, unless it's very obvious that it's wrong.
Yeah.
So, and then on the other hand, I think there's only one time when I've actually thought this book is really well translated.
Yeah.
And it was a book that I read. It was a book that was originally written in Spanish, and I read it in English. And I was really surprised at how well translated some of the things were, because I could tell what it said originally in Spanish from what had been translated, but I thought what the choice of words was very clever.
Okay. And what makes it clever?
Well, I think there are two things. One is knowing when to leave in Spanish words that might not be. You might not have to translate. Like, for example, if you have chorizo, you don't need to say like sausage.
So yeah, the chorizo is a type of sausage. So you don't need to translate that, obviously. Yeah, obviously no situations. But for example, Sid Lowe, who's the English journalist living in Madrid who covers La Liga and Spanish football for The Guardian. Like, I remember before, some people were criticizing in the comments that he left Spanish words in his articles, and he does it all the time. And even with he interviewed Gerard Piqué this morning, and he did that as well. And he actually, because sometimes the Guardian contributors or the writers of the articles respond below the line, and he said, well, that's because sometimes, I debate that myself, whether I should leave them in or not, but I think it adds more to the character, because this is obviously Spain. It adds more to what they're saying, because they're not saying that this is fantastic. They're saying it was the puta madre or whatever. So that's like, so I'm trying to give more authenticity to their voice, but also as well there are certain things like that cannot be properly translated. Even like Pep Guardiola's famous Mourinho's the puto amo. Like, that doesn't really, I don't think has a proper translation. Like, they could say the dog's bollocks maybe, but which actually would be effective in that situation. But again, it doesn't really translate directly though, So like, he left him in, and you're right. It's a talent about knowing when to leave them in and when not to. But I think he does it very well, because I think it adds more to the story. But also he knows, like, well, this has no translation. Why bother translating it?
Yeah.
Just put it in, and then in brackets like the rough approximation, and that can vary.
Yes.
With how well he can link it to an equivalent phrase.
Well, I think if
English.
It's a translation, then that's the knack. But also, if it's an article that you're writing, then it's like when we're writing materials to teach English. You can easily say something within the sentence that is like self-explanatory. So you can actually put an expression or something like that in Spanish, and by the way it's phrased in English, you instantly know what it means.
But is it overall, like, you can never really win fully, like anything. If you write anything, not everybody's going to like it. If you're a footballer, not everybody's going to like you, or whatever domain that you're in. But one of the most famous lines in English literature is translated from Greek, the rosy-fingered dawn, which comes from the Iliad, I think, or the Odyssey. I think it's the Iliad. But for example, but if you say like the rosy fingers of the dawn, right, which would be slightly different, wouldn't really lose much of the meaning, and one person could think that's a better translation, and another person could think, no, like the one that we know, the rosy-fingered dawn, is superb and shouldn't be touched. So it really comes down as well to what you personally respond to. So
Yes.
no matter how well you do it, you think you do it, there's always going to be some. Well, actually, I prefer
Yeah.
a slightly different wording to that.
But to be honest, that
Yeah.
happens with your own language,
Yeah.
because you're always, if you're a writer, you're always gonna think that something could have been phrased in a different way or in a
Yeah.
better way, or you're gonna interpret it slightly differently. But that's just personal perception, so
Well,
that
yeah.
happens in your own language.
Well, that's what I mean. So, you can never really fully satisfy anybody
exactly.
with a
It's the
translation, no?
same,
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. I'll be
Mm.
making a note of that. Lo punto in mi Ford Pinto. So you're a translator, as I keep saying. So, is there anything that you want to? You're now the spokesperson for all translators.
yeah.
Is there anything you want to say? Wow, that is easy to translate because that was nothing. No words in any language, so that's easily to be put into another language. Is it unfair to say that translators are frustrated writers, or is it just a different type of vocation?
I think it's extremely unfair.
I know, I'm just provoking you.
Yes, I know. Well, I think they're like two completely different things. I mean,
By the way, interesting choice you made with your hair today.
I'm not biting. Yeah, I think they're two completely different things. I mean, it's not related at all. But I think being a writer, but
well, no, I said I'd like to provoke you, right? But not to provoke you, but just to talk shit for a second, to get you to respond. But for example, referees, right? Don't give me that motion, please. I will not respond to that. So anyway, this stays in, by the way. So referees, a lot of referees say this, like they're either ex-footballers or people who aren't good enough to be footballers and just love the sport and just want to be involved with it in some capacity. Even there's a great documentary made by BT Sport who have a good track record of making sports documentaries, football documentaries. And there's even people at the very low levels who just do it just because of the passion they have for the game. So obviously there's a lot of people who do it because they love languages and they love the challenge of and it's a real vocation. So obviously I respect that. But is there some people out there who never quite made it as a writer, but they just want to be involved with, and there's no shame in that because that happens. Like you look at a lot of referees who are fantastic in their job, but they want to be involved in some way with the sport. So is there somebody out there who is a failed writer but wants to be involved somewhere with literature and their avenue is translation?
Well, to answer that question, we would need anybody who is actually like that to contact us. That I know, and I must admit, I don't know many translators, but I think a lot of translators actually also write things.
Yeah.
And I think there's a benefit, which is what I was going to say before, in being a writer or writing, because then when you're translating, you understand what the process of writing is, so it makes it easier to translate.
Okay.
And I don't know, I would compare it more to, well, you couldn't be a writer, so you're a reader, but you couldn't be a writer, so you're a translator.
Well, no, you're responding to it in an emotional way, which is very
Me?
in Spanish. Yes, you, because it's not an accusation. It's not like
No, I know,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that from my point of view.
Yeah, well, no, the vast majority of translators do it because they love it and they're good at it and it's part of their vocation. But I'm just saying, because you can reduce anything. You can't cook, so you watch Jamie Oliver. I don't know. But
yeah, exactly. So you can't write, so you read. But,
yeah.
But you can't write, so you translate.
Well, it's not that far-fetched, so, I mean, surely there must be one or two that fall into this category.
There must be one of two.
So, well, that's it. So, we'll just join you back for part 3. Thank you very much. welcome back to part 3. We've just heard a riveting translation piece from Maria. So well done on all of that. I really enjoyed it. I really did. Fighting in Barcelona. Breaking news. Have you heard about this? English tourists running riot on the streets of the Ramblas and in the beach towns. I am so shocked of all the violence that's happening at the moment. Anyway, on to happier things. So, next week we're going to be making that video based off the translations.
Yes.
And what else? We'll order a new business card. That's definitely something that we're going to do.
Yes.
And we will do little bits and pieces week 2 of October, which means week 2 of proper teaching again. And all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to add to this segment?
Well, the rest of our empire will be on display for next week.
Exactly. I'm thinking of relocating our offices.
Oh, yeah?
To
a non-mobile location.
Yeah, I like to be stationary.
We'll just let the wheels down.
There's a British comedian called Tim Leash. I think that's his name. He specialises in comedy that's kind of based on letters he writes to councils or people, or kind of just to wind them up. And one of them involves him putting up a picture for a missing cat in his office, but it was actually a picture of a fox. And he got lots of complaints because you're not supposed to have animals in the office. But that's not going to happen to us though, because we're far too busy for hijinks like that. And we have better uses for our time, no?
Yes, and we only kill plants, not animals.
Exactly. What's the name of the plant we killed?
The poet's carnation.
The poet's carnation?
Yes.
The poet's damnation, more like. Given how poorly it fared. Literally the day after we bought it, it just started dying.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
And then it finished dying the day after.
Yeah.
So it was a very fast dying process.
I flushed mine down the toilet. So I think I'm gonna
tell us what happened in 6 months.
Even sooner. If you think people are whining at the moment, wait till they have plumbing problems, then you'll hear them complain properly. So anyway, adeu.
Bye.
Adios.
Adios.
Ni hao.
Arrivederci.
Shlán. See, many languages, not political. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Subsound Radio. We bring you streaming and live broadcasting from the capital. This is the El Arpa Podcast.